How we doing, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. Max from Chef Theory Health here. Wanted to touch base on an article that came out last week that's causing a lot of waves and catching a lot of headlines with mainstream media regarding the sweetener erythritol found in a lot of health labeled products and its correlation to an increased risk in negative cardiovascular events. So what I'd like to do in this video is just break down the study for you a little bit, talk about what is erythritol exactly, where is it found, and then give you my takeaway on the whole study and erythritol and these sweeteners in general. So just quickly to dive into this article here, and the headlines that is creating, a lot of the headlines are sensationalizing it a little bit and saying, this artificial sweetener causing increased risk in heart attacks and stroke and blood clotting, and drumming up a little bit of fear mongering that I think is disproportional to what the actual study and the results that the study produced here. So let's talk about the study. It tracked about 2,000 patients over a 3-year period and tracked their blood levels of erythritol when they had any kind of cardiovascular event within those 3 years. It did not track what they ate. It did not track any other aspects. These couple thousand patients were already people at a higher risk for cardiovascular event, I think is a key note to take in there. And another key note to take in here is the difference between correlation and causation. So there was no connections or no evidence that the elevated erythritol blood levels were actually causing the cardiovascular events. The correlation is just saying that people had cardiac events and how many of them had elevated blood levels of erythritol. And there was a high enough level that they said that there's some kind of correlation in there. They did also take a very small number of these patients, only 8 of them, and measured what their blood levels of erythritol were after eating an erythritol sweetened product. And they saw elevated levels of erythritol in the blood after eating the product. So they therefore then said, eating erythritol causes elevated blood levels of erythritol. We noticed elevated blood levels of erythritol in patients that had cardiac events. So that's what they said there. One major aspect of this study, they also said more studies are needed to track what may be the cause of these cardiovascular events. So from here, let's dive into what is erythritol anyways. Okay, so erythritol is technically a sugar alcohol. It is a polyol. It does not contain alcohol or sugar. It is made by fermenting a carbohydrate source using microbacteria and commonly yeast. The most common source of what they ferment is corn. Typically, it's going to be GMO corn. Polyols put the P in FODMAP category of foods. So these are fermentable foods, meaning in your digestive tract, they are fermented by the microbacteria in the large intestine. There's a couple different types of polyols here. Erythritol, the most popular that's used in packaged products. Isomalt, lactitol, maltitol, xylitol, sorbitol are some other ones that are commonly used. Erythritol is the most commonly used because it's typically causing the least amount of digestive discomfort. One side effect of some of these sweeteners is that it causes digestive discomfort, and that's because of the fermentation process throughout the digestive system. Erythritol is almost purely absorbed into the blood, and then processed through the kidneys and excreted in the urine, not causing any kind of elevation of blood sugar. That is why it is most commonly used, is because in these health promoting products, is because of its the lack of impact on the blood sugar levels. It also has a fairly similar flavor to sugar, and is almost 0 calories per gram. You can see on the couple of diagrams I'm showing up here, the fermentability, the calories, and the different types here. Because of these effects that it doesn't have on blood sugar, and its taste and flavor, and also texture used in baking and different processed products, it's commonly used in growing in popularity in different products. So let's talk about where it is actually found. So as I mentioned previously, erythritol is also found in some naturally occurring fruits and vegetables. Here's a couple of them and a couple examples of them. But it's also actually produced in our body as a metabolite. So as a byproduct in the pentose phosphate pathway, which comes into glucose regulation within the body. So there's small amounts that are naturally produced in the body that could be contributing to blood levels of erythritol in some of these patients. It's also found naturally in some fruits and vegetables, but where it's really coming into heavy use is in the packaged products, in the health and low carb field. Protein bars, granolas, any kind of processed, low carb foods often contain erythritol. So that's the main source of where this is going to come from in most of our common diets here. Okay, so let's get to the good part here and the takeaways of what I actually take away from this study and my take on erythritol and this brand of sweeteners in general. The first thing I want to reiterate here is the same thing the study said, is that more studies are needed. I think that this study warrants, some attention given to these polyols and erythritols and sugar alcohols and what their effect in the body might be, because they were originally promoted as having no effect in the body. And that's not just true. They are processed by the body. But I do think they have a much less detrimental effect than using sugar. So I think that the attention that this study has gotten is definitely disproportional to what the actual results and findings of the study were, that we need to calm down just a little bit, that erythritol isn't causing all these cardiovascular events. But at the same time, I don't think that we should just be blindly consuming erythritol with no regard, especially because it's typically consumed and found in highly processed products. And I think that is probably more what might be causing and correlating to the negative cardiac events, is that all the other products found in these processed goods, the oils and artificial ingredients, causing a much more deleterious effect than the actual erythritol itself. So it's not, to me, so much the erythritol, it's more the products that it's found in that are causing the problem. So that's my major takeaway there. But so what I recommend and what do? I use erythritol from time to time, mostly when I'm making my own kind of baked goods, muffins and cakes and brownies and cookies. I will sometimes use monk fruit sweetener that is typically mixed with erythritol to make it an easier one-to-one sugar substitute. But I don't use it every day, I don't think it should be consumed multiple times a day on a daily basis. For now, let's limit the use a little bit. I tend to gravitate towards monk fruit and stevia. I'll use a little bit of pure organic maple syrup and a little bit of honey when I'm sweetening my items, but we want to limit those doses a little bit. So that's really what it comes down to. Limiting the amount of processed foods we're eating that contain erythritol, I think, is better advice than hyper-focusing on erythritol as causing these major cardiac events. At the same time, I think, a little bit more study is needed, and that we should kind of use those as our guidelines going forward. So I hope this helps shed a little bit of light, maybe, calm down some of the hype that the article is getting, and kind of go from there. So if you're interested in some of those recipes that I talked about, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow, check out my Facebook and Instagram. And I often post, what am I eating, some recipes that I think keep a healthy balance, and go from there. All right. Thanks, guys.